In the early 1930s, amidst the Great Depression, people were illegally riding freight trains in hopes of finding work. On March 25, 1931, aboard a train traveling between Chattanooga and Memphis, Tennessee, were several white and black youth. A fight broke out between the white and black groups, and the whites were kicked off the train. The young white men reported to the nearest station master what they described as an assault by a gang of blacks. The station master notified ahead, and the freight stopped in Paint Rock. Here, 9 of the blacks were stopped by dozens of armed men and taken to Scottsboro jail. Amongst those on the train were 2 white women, Victoria Price and Ruby Bates. Fearful of being charged with vagrancy due to their failure to purchase a train ticket, the 2 women accused the prisoners of rape. Clarence Norris, Olin Montgomery, Hayward Patterson, Ozzie Powell, Willie Robertson, Charlie Weems, Eugene Williams, and brothers Andy and Roy Wright, soon known as the Scottsboro Boys, were tried in April 1931 for Victoria Price and Ruby Bates' accusation of rape.
Scottsboro. Again, you can't understand unless you've got the context of the Great Depression. You have folks riding the rails looking for work, just because they can't afford to, I'll go find this job here. So they're just hopping on a train and riding in, trying to find work wherever they can find work. Well, what happens in the Scottsboro case is you have 9 black teenagers, and some of them get in a fight on the train with a couple of white guys. The train stops in Scottsboro, because this fight has broken out. As they're getting off the train, as the sheriff's folks are there, the white guys get off, the black guys get off, and then 2 white women get off. And the townsfolk are looking around going, whoa. And the white women, because you've got black guys and white women in Alabama in the early 1930s, I believe 1932. It's like, whoa. And the women, Victoria Price and Ruby Bates, Yale rape.
The trial of Clarence Norris and Charlie Weems would be the first on April 6, 1931, only 12 days following the boys' arrest. During the jury's deliberation, the second trial was already underway. The first jury deliberated less than 2 hours before returning with a guilty verdict and imposing the death sentence on both Norris and Weems. The courtroom erupted in loud excitement, one that could be heard by the second jury for the following trial of Hayward Patterson. The jury quickly convicted Patterson and recommended death by electric chair. The next trial began within minutes of the previous one, ending once again with the death penalty for 5 of the boys. The only person without a death sentence would be Roy Wright, the youngest boy at age 13. Wright's trial was declared a hung jury, meaning the jury couldn't agree on a verdict after extensive deliberation. The jury concluded Wright's guilt, however punishment could not be agreed on, and consequently the court was forced to declare a mistrial. In 3 days' time, 8 of the 9 boys, all under age 21, 4 under 18, and 2 16 and under, were hurried through trials surrounded by white hatred, prejudice, and sentenced to be killed in the electric chair at the earliest possible moment permitted by the law. Not only was the courtroom judge, Alfred E. Hawkins, described as one big smiling white face, but notably according to the defendant Clarence Norris, he let it be known that we were guilty and a trial was a waste of time and money. For each trial, all white juries were selected. There were very few African Americans in the jury pool, as most had been disenfranchised because of white discriminatory practices and were therefore disqualified from jury duty.
3 farmers, 2 mill workers, a barber, a salesman, a bank cashier, a storekeeper, and a draftsman.
The judge had ordered the Alabama bar to assist the defendants, and the only attorney who volunteered was a 69-year-old who had not defended a case in decades named Milo Moody. Alongside Moody was Stephen Roddy, a Chattanooga, Tennessee real estate lawyer whom the judge persuaded to assist Moody. Roddy later admitted that he had not had the time to prepare and was not familiar with criminal law. Moody was also frequently prone to forgetfulness, and Roddy often appeared incapacitated due to heavy drinking. The defense lawyers quickly demonstrated their ineffectiveness in several ways. They expressed a willingness to have all 9 defendants tried together, despite the prejudice such a trial might cause to the youngest, Roy Wright. The prosecution feared that a single trial might constitute reversible error and decided to try the boys in groups of 2 or 3. The defense offered only the defendants themselves as witnesses, and their testimony consisted of rambling, sometimes incoherent, and riddled with evident misstatements. No further closing arguments were offered by the defense attorneys, and a local editorialist described the state's case as almost perfect.
In a 1977 interview, he recalls what happened on that train 60 years ago.
The place was surrounded when this train reached there with a mob, all white. They had shotguns, pistols, sticks, pieces of iron, everything. They happened to take everybody off of this train and round us all up. The crowd comes to hollering, let's take these black son of bitches up here and put them to a tree. I just thought that I was gonna die.
Lynching refers to the commonplace practice in which a lynching mob served as the judge, jury, and executioner of prosecuted individuals, primarily African Americans. By definition, it means illegal hanging. Lynching was illegal and outside of the justice system. However, it was widely used throughout the country, particularly in the South. The most common charges that led to lynching happened to be murder and rape, and it is important to note that no white man got lynched for raping a black woman, but many black men got lynched for allegedly raping white women. In the Scottsboro case, when the 9 black men were accused of gang raping the 2 white women, the case was tried solely on the basis of the testimony of the women. The prosecution's case relied heavily on the testimony of Victoria Price, who was often evasive in her answers, pretended not to understand the question, or flat out lied, otherwise known as perjured testimony. The defense attempted to cast doubt upon Price's credibility with the line of questioning her history of prostitution, which she promptly denied, another lie. Price would carry the courtroom's sentiment with her. She would often play up to it and crack jokes that would have the entire room in laughter. Ruby Bates, on the other hand, was found by the prosecution to be a weak witness. This was due to the fact that she could not make her testimony fit with the positive identification of the boys and the account of events as told by Price on the stand. The minutes of the trial show that Price was the only alleged eyewitness of the group on the train that testified at great length, leading to the wrongful conviction of the Scottsboro boys. Dr. R. Bridges for the prosecution testified that he found only a few small bruises and scratches and that she was not lacerated at all. He also claimed that there was no blood found on either victim and that neither had seemed particularly upset when asked if either had been raped. The best that he could offer was that it was possible. Dr. Marvin Lynch, who also examined Price and Bates, testified that he couldn't find any evidence of internal violence resulting from rape. When on the stand, almost all the boys denied taking part in the crime. However, Clarence Norris shocked everyone when he announced in his testimony that every one of them had something to do with the girls before they put the white boys off the train. He claimed a gang rape had taken place, but he was the only one not involved. Norris later testified, "We was scared and I don't know what I said. They told us if we didn't confess they'd kill us, give us to the mob outside." This is common in the criminal justice system, particularly on the part of the police. This is an example of a false confession elicited by intimidation tactics, coercion, and aggressive police. The confession produced by Norris was a coerced compliant confession as a result of psychological, physical, and environmental pressures. A suspect may falsely confess to achieve an immediate goal such as ending interrogation or less punishment, as seen with Norris.
Washington, D.C., the Scottsboro case. Throughout the world goes the news of the most important United States Supreme Court decision in years. The order for a retrial of the 7 Negro youths recently tried on charges of assault and condemned to death by an Alabama court. Like the Sacco, Vanzetti, and Mooney cases, the Scottsboro trial has attracted worldwide attention. Radicals contending that the Negro youths were railroaded through Alabama courts.
The Communist Party as well as the NAACP soon took interest in the Scottsboro case. The party used its legal arm, the International Labor Defense, also known as the ILD, to take up the defendants' cases. They appealed the case before the Alabama Supreme Court, but then turned to the U.S. Supreme Court in November of 1932. The case overrode Alabama's decisions and granted new trials to all of the defendants. It was ruled that the boys were not given adequate nor fair counsel. New trials were issued, and the U.S. Constitution demanded that they receive appropriate counsel. Haywood Patterson received his new trial and again was found guilty and sentenced to death. The presiding Judge Horton realized that justice was not being served and threw out convictions and ordered a retrial. Prosecutors eventually petitioned for a new judge, resulting in Judge Callahan. Callahan upheld Patterson and Norris's convictions. In 1935, the defense appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, which once again reversed the convictions. This was on the grounds that blacks were left out of the jury pool. After this, Alabama had to include black citizens when choosing the jury. The retrial included 11 white men and 1 black man. Eventually, in 1937, the majority of the Scottsboro boys had their charges dropped, although all of them had served 6 years in prison. A grand total of 104 years collectively were spent imprisoned.
Willie Roberson, pardoned July 24, 1937, after serving 6 years in prison, sought and achieved complete anonymity. Eugene Williams, pardoned July 24, 1937, after serving 6 years in prison, successfully established a new identity and disappeared from the public eye. Olin Montgomery, pardoned July 24, 1937, after serving 6 years in prison, repeatedly arrested drunk and disorderly, settled in Georgia, 1944. Leroy Wright, pardoned July 24, 1937, after serving 6 years in prison. Excellent adjustment. Then murdered his wife and committed suicide, September 1959. Charlie Weems, paroled November 7, 1943, served 12 years in prison, dropped quickly into obscurity. Clarence Norris, paroled December 1946, served 15 years in prison, changed identity, and disappeared. Ozzie Powell, paroled December 1946, served 15 years in prison, chronically unemployed because of identification with Scottsboro, changed name, and disappeared. Haywood Patterson, escaped July 1948, served 17 years. Convicted of manslaughter in Detroit, Michigan, 1951. Died of cancer, Michigan State Prison, August 24, 1952. Andy Wright, paroled June 9, 1950. Served 19 years in prison, July 11, 1951, charged with raping a 13-year-old Albany, New York girl. Charge proved false, changed identity, and disappeared.
This case impacted future trials against African Americans as attorneys struggled to get racially fair juries. It set precedents for legal counsel and helped other poor minorities receive a fair trial with an appointed, prepared counsel. This case also helped educate the commoners, especially black citizens, on their rights as criminal defendants. In most cases, whites could feel confident about their protection of rights guaranteeing them the right to a fair trial. However, blacks, especially those in the South and of lower financial and economic status, could not always feel as secure. The Scottsboro boys deserve the same protection under the law that the Constitution grants to all Americans. However, they did not always get it.